You're tuned into the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Zeno Pucks. Here are your hosts, Andy and Brian Matusi.
Welcome back to the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast presented by Zeno Pucks. Brian and Andy back with you here this week. We have made it to the end of the conference finals. Only one playoff series remains, and that is the Stanley Cup final. We will break that down, of course, and preview that on this episode. But before we get there, just two things from around the league we need to get to, and then we'll, of course, discuss the results of the conference final and the fallout from each of those series as well. Andrew, you're back today, thankfully, and I am almost not sick. I'm pretty much recovered now, so definitely much more functional than I was the other night. It took quite a bit of editing for that show to not sound like shit complete shit the other night. I'll tell you that.
Oh, you sound infinitely better than you did the other night. I'll tell you that.
Oh, I was struggling. My wife could tell you I was like sweating bullets in our bedroom, just laying in the bed. I was hot. I was hot as hell. I was sweaty and not having a good time.
Well, you look good I saw you last night, so you look good.
That's right. Yeah, we had a killer dinner last night. Holy shit, that was good.
Yeah, if you anywhere, I don't know exactly where all their locations are, but if
I know they're at least in the Midwest.
I would say if you ever get a chance to try Cooper's Hawk Winery, I highly recommend it. The wine was incredible, the drinks were incredible, the food was incredible.
Yeah, food was food was so good. This is not a sponsored ad, by the way. It's just
it's not.
It's just where we went for dinner. Yeah, no, it was really good.
It was terrific. Yeah,
we've been talking about trying it for a while, and well worth the wait.
For sure.
So, it was a good Long Island they made me too. Long Island,
dude. I have to tell you that those drinks we had last night, you could tell they actually measured their pours, and because none of the drinks tasted like straight gas. Like they actually had flavor to them. They were good. Yeah, like I give them 5 out of 5.
Yeah, my favorite cocktail is Long Island iced tea, but that was the first one I've had in a while that didn't just taste like a tequila island iced tea.
Yeah,
because everywhere you go that makes them just dumps 10 truckloads of tequila in them and then splashes every other ingredient, the gin, the triple sec, the Coke. Oh, God. So
shout out Cooper's Hawk for phenomenal drinks and for phenomenal food.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was definitely good food. What was your comment last night? I'm the only guy that gets drunk before dinner.
Brian is the only guy I know. Hold on. Brian is the only guy I know who got drunk before the food arrived and was sober by the time he was done eating it.
So to clarify what happened yesterday, I hardly ate anything yesterday. I ate lunch at like 11 o'clock. And
hold on, time out.
What's up?
You got to preface it by letting everybody know you're not really a drinker. You don't drink a lot.
No, I'm a pothead. That's my bread and butter. But no, I'm not a huge drinker, and when I do drink, I'm a big lightweight, which again, for a guy that's a lightweight, maybe drinking Long Islands isn't smart, but so we'll start with that, and then I'll also say I hardly ate anything yesterday. I ate lunch 8 hours before we even went to dinner, much less before we actually ate. And so we're probably talking about a 9-hour gap. So I destroyed that Long Island so fast, thinking that, the food would come while I was drinking and I could eat it and balance it out. There was probably a 10 to 15 minute window from the time I finished the drink to the time we got the food. From the time I got the drink to the time we got the food was a little bit longer. They were busy, but
they were hopping,
by the time the food got there, everything in the room was really fuzzy and I was starting to have trouble focusing on who I was talking to. I was like, oh, they got to hurry up and get this food here. So they brought my food. I got gnocchi alla vodka, and it was, first of all, that was incredible. That sauce is great. The gnocchi was good. And I devoured it. But yeah, by the time we left, because we sat around between eating and just chilling after we were done eating, we probably sat there for a good hour or so after. By the time we left, I was pretty well sobered up.
Yeah.
So it was a roller coaster, but I had a good time.
Hey man, nothing wrong with being a lightweight. Just means it's cheaper for you to get a nice buzz. So
that's right. So, anyways, I think this is a hockey show. Well, it's a football show first and foremost.
Yeah.
But so let's talk about some hockey. So, real quick around the league, we still have 2 head coaching vacancies. The Bruins still have not made an official announcement on who their next coach is. The Penguins, there's been some rumblings there too, but Lane Lambert headed to the Seattle Kraken, formerly with the New York Islanders. I actually had in my show notes he was going to the Island, which that is not correct because Patrick Roy is the coach there. Lane Lambert, formerly with the Islanders, formerly an assistant with the Maple Leafs. He'll head to Seattle there as that group looks to start turning things around. That's going to be a work in progress. I think the Kraken got a little too big for their britches the year they knocked Colorado off in the playoffs. And there's been a little bit of spinning their tires since then. So we'll see where it goes for the Kraken from here. But I anticipate that there's still a long road ahead with them. But for Lambert, it's a good chance to get his feet back in the water again as a head coach and see if his second go around is better than his first, because his run with the Islanders was lackluster to say the least. And I mean, it's from all things we heard, it sounded like his run in Toronto as an assistant wasn't terrible. So we'll see how things go for Seattle there. But again, that's a much larger work in progress that he's at this point going to be a small piece of. Your mic's muted.
Of course it is. It's funny that you bring that up because not an hour ago, I was just listening to Elliot Friedman talk about the same thing when they got a little too big for their bridges against Colorado. And he essentially said, look, the team wasn't ready to keep up with success like that. So that first round win against Colorado a couple years ago was actually the worst thing for him. And I think he brings up a great point because as a fan, yeah, obviously you want to see your team win a round in the playoffs, but ultimately they weren't a team that was prepared to follow that up the next season and keep up with that momentum. So I thought he brought up a good point with that.
Yeah, and that is true. I mean, he makes a very good point as he phrases it probably a lot more eloquently than I would. But I just think the reality is, first of all, nobody expected them really to beat the Avalanche, and was at 23. It was their title defense year.
Yeah.
But they came into the playoffs, if I remember correctly. They came in pretty hot that year. Grubauer actually had a good playoffs. And so they knock off the Avalanche, and all of a sudden they get that feeling like Vegas where, all right, it's time to turn up the heat. We're going to be a contender year after year. They go all in. Grubauer absolutely falls off the planet and is like the most useless goalie in the NHL. Now, to the Kraken's credit, they have Joey Decord now, so they'll be fine in that going forward. But they don't have the horses like Vegas had in the beginning, and like they still have, that they've continued to have, since then. And so their path to success is going to be a lot more of a winding road than Vegas is. And I think they just tried to streamline it too much. And so they're paying the price a little bit. But look, a couple of years, you can change the narrative pretty quick. Having an elite goalie like Joey Decord, I think, is going to accelerate that build too. So I don't think there are dark days ahead, but it's not going to be a situation like Vegas where they're going to just stomp the league for years to come.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. I mean, one, those are two completely different ownership groups too. Like Vegas's ownership group is completely unmatched. I would argue the rest of the league.
Bill Foley's done a great job since he brought that team into the league. Also, this is my necessary reminder that Vegas was not gifted a good team. And if you're one of the people that thinks they were, you're just dead wrong, because everybody shit on the entire franchise when they put that expansion roster together, and then only to double back and say they were gifted a franchise after they went to the final.
Well, not only are you wrong if you think that way, you're also stupid. So,
yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
And if that offends you, let me remind you, we do not care.
Yeah, all right. I don't listen to our show then.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the reality. They weren't. You're telling me the team with Cody Eakin and Lucas Spiza and Derek Engelin was going to be some elite team? Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
So, now they did have some good players, yes, but they all turned it on after they got there, except Marcia. So that was one where they got him, and I'm like, they were gifted this player because Florida didn't want to. I forgot who Florida wanted to protect at the time. But they gave them Riley Smith. So in order for them to take Jonathan Marchessault, so they gave them 2 players, which is hilarious. And then they protected. No, it wasn't Ekblad. He was protected. It was somebody. It was a bum. It might have been Alex Petrovic because he was with the Panthers organization 1,000 years ago. It might have been.
Now he's in the
It
minors.
was some. No, he just played in the playoffs with Dallas.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he was a
fuck.
call up because Nils Lundqvist has been injured since forever.
Yeah,
and Matt
he
Dumba
was in the minors.
Yeah, and Matt Dumba simply was not usable, and Ilya Lyubushkin was not usable. So Petrovic was in the roster for them, and he played great. And we'll get to Dallas in a little bit, but I shouldn't say he played great. He played great given the scenario and coming up from the minors. But only other thing in the league that we need to address real quick: Tyson Forster extends in Philly two more seasons. So Forster had a pretty decent year this year. Obviously, I mean 25 goals isn't bad as a forward, as a young forward in the league. He's only 23, so he's about half a point a game. Wasn't a great season in Philly. Obviously, now with Torts being gone, I'm sure the path forward will be a lot better under Talk. We spoke on Philly a little bit ago. With the young stars that they have there, you think of guys like Bobby Brink, obviously Matvei Mishkov. There's talent there. Owen Tippett, Travis Konechny. Like, there are good players there. I don't think it's the best, sexiest roster, but I think Talk's a good enough coach where this will be one of the guys who flourishes under his system. So only time will tell, but congrats to Forster extending in Philly and not having to pack up his life and move it somewhere else at a young age.
That's always a positive.
So, all right, let's get, you know what? This actually may take a while. We're going to take an early break. We'll hear from Xenopucks, and then we'll come back and we'll be all playoffs all the time.
All right. Yeah, that sounds good.
This is the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast.
It's hockey season, and you're looking to work on your stick handling or maybe even your shot, but ice time just isn't an option for you right now. Luckily, our buddies over at Xenopucks have got you covered. They've developed an elite off-ice practice puck that, in addition to looking like the real thing, is the same size and weight as a regulation hockey puck to give you that authentic feel on the end of your stick. It works better than other off-ice practice pucks on almost any surface, whether you use it on hardwood, carpet, concrete, or even asphalt. Xenopucks glide like a real puck on ice. So if you're looking to improve your game without setting foot on the ice, head over to www.xenopucks.com and get yourself a puck. Check out their merch selection and be sure to follow them on Instagram at Xenopucks. All right, welcome back to Fresh Ice. Thank you as always to our friends over at Xenopucks. Great product, great people. With that being said, the conference finals have come to a conclusion, and I think for the most part we've reached the result everybody was kind of expecting, but we're going to take a look back on these conference final games, kind of go over each one, and then we'll look ahead to what to expect for the Stanley Cup final. Brian, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, we'll start in the East. This is the series that I think was probably the more predictable of the two, and that's not, well, it is to dunk on the Hurricanes for me, but
it's your favorite shit, man.
It's not to dunk on the Hurricanes specifically, but I think this just seemed like such an obvious outcome. I think we both hit this on the head with Panthers in 5.
Yes, we did.
So let's go through this and then we'll get to the fallout from the series. So game one comes, and as expected, Florida's ready to go, and the Hurricanes just get shelled. And towards the end of that game, Gostisbehere, that was the game where Gostisbehere just fired the puck at Marchand at the end because he was mad at him for taking a run. So probably a worst case scenario start to that series for the Hurricanes. They just came out looking flat. They never showed signs of life through that whole game. Freddie did the Freddie Anderson in the playoffs.
Freddie.
Yeah, he's gonna Freddie. And after game one, Frank Saravalli was on his own show talking about that he thought the Hurricanes conference final stat was bullshit. And I just thought that was an absolute joke that he said it. I mean, truthfully, Frank is one of the league's biggest insiders. Like, he knows his shit, but he's dead wrong on this, man. Look, I know that the 09 team has nothing to do with Brind'Amour as the coach now, although I believe he was actually on that team as a player.
He was on that team.
Look, Brendan Moore's been the coach of this Hurricanes team, which, yes, has gone to 3 conference finals, and that's worth mentioning. But why do they always get their dicks kicked in? At some point, you might to say it's bullshit that this stat is made as such a big deal. It's not fair because something is not right here. Either the team sucks, or the coach sucks, or some combination of the two. But to just say outright that this stat is not, that it's a bullshit thing and that people are overblowing it, I don't think that's true. I think the reality is that it's the reason they're not successful. Something is not good enough here, whether it's the scoring, whether it's the goaltending, whether it's the coach. I'm not a GM. It's not my job to say what needs to be changed there, but something's amiss. And truthfully, the reality is that they've had essentially 2 different groups during this stretch here. 2019's team, I think Frank said, only has 4 or 5 guys that are on the current Hurricanes roster. Fine. But then this group that's been in the conference final 2 of the last 3 seasons and has won a total of 1 game and has looked like shit in almost every single game.
Right.
I mean, even the game they won, I mean, it was close to the end. Like they never really looked like the better team in any of these conference finals they've been to. So whether it's the coach, the goalie, the offense, whatever, something's not good here. And it's time to start holding the team responsible for not being good enough. Yes, I've said it myself. They're the best shutdown defensive team in the league. But Freddie Anderson is not a good goalie. Let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will go to the ends of the earth unnecessarily to defend him. And I just think it's a lot of effort to be wrong about something. But the scoring is straight up not good enough. It is non-existent. They are so anemic when they face good teams. And yes, they kicked the shit out of the Devils, who had no healthy players, and they kicked the shit out of Washington. And to their credit, again, shut down one of the best offensive leagues or teams in the league. Sorry. But if they go up against a good team and they fall flat on their face, in 2019, they got killed by the Bruins. In 2023, I know those games were close. In that conference final, all of those games were really close games. But the end of the day, they won none of them. And then this year, they absolutely get their shit kicked in every game. They can't score. Freddie can't keep the puck out of the net. This team is not designed to win a Stanley Cup. It's not. It's just not. There's a large enough sample size now to say that this team is simply not good enough to win the Stanley Cup as constructed. And I will also say, because I can already hear Hurricanes fans screaming, I know this year was kind of supposed to be a retool year. They lose Shea, they lose Pesci, but they get huge contributions. Of course, I thought Jalen Chatfield had a really good season. They bring over that Nikishin kid from Russia who's supposed to be unreal. So we'll see how he does next year with the team. The Hurricanes do have a ton of cap space this offseason and will have plenty of money to go out and sign some big scoring wingers that they just badly need. They need some help up front. But here's the thing. You can have all the cap space, but it doesn't mean people are going to want to come play for you. Now, I will say this in defense of Carolina, that as far as fan bases go, I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't want to play there. Those fans are unbelievably loud. It's one of the best buildings in the league. But the other side of that is you see what the results are in the playoffs. Do you want to go somewhere where the reputation is that they get their shit kicked in late in the playoffs? Because the mindset is either, if I go here, we're going to get hosed in the conference final and this group's going to fall on its face, or can I go there and be the guy that helps push them over the hump? I don't know. Rantanen went there and his style of play didn't gel with Brendan Moore's system. He's really a guy that forces guys to defend more than they normally would, which again works. They play some of the best defensive hockey, but I don't think that, again, even with all the cap space they have, I don't think the Hurricanes can win with this core. I do not think they can. And they certainly, no matter what, cannot win with Freddie Anderson as their goalie. They need to stop giving this guy money. Teams need to stop giving this guy money. He had one good run with the Ducks early in his career and has done dick all since then. And even his one good run with the Ducks, they lost in Game 7 of the conference finals of the Blackhawks in 2015, and he had a great year that year too. But the reality is he's injury prone, and at this stage in his career is not effective enough against the good teams late in the playoffs.
Well, one thing I want to bring up that I caught through that very long rant you just had.
Sorry.
No, dude, hey, you've been waiting for this because all they did was prove.
I've been saying this since before the season started.
Yeah, I was going to say we've had this conversation both on this show and off this show multiple times. But I do want to point out this year and in 2023 and as well as 2019, yeah, two of those, they played two very good Panthers teams, and they played a very good Bruins team too in 2019. So I don't want to discredit the fact that it's not like they were playing garbage teams, but at the same time, when you have the best defense in the league this year, and then you have a performance like you did in the conference final against Florida. Look, I know Florida is a physical team. They play that old school, in your face, you ain't getting shit past this kind of hockey, and Bob's been unbelievable. But they just look deflated out there the entire series, except for one game, and they won 3-0. If Freddie got a shutout, but I don't know, man. I just don't know. I don't know where you go from here. I've said it before that Brind'Amour isn't the answer for them. So
yeah, I don't.
I'll tell you.
I don't think he is either. There's just, like I said, there's a lot of things that I don't like about this team. I don't like Freddie Anderson. I don't think RBA is the right coach for the job there. I don't know, man. It just something is not right here, and it irritates me. They're like the Metropolitan and Maple Leafs. They just keep trying over and over again with the same shit, and it just doesn't work, and they just keep refusing to accept it. Well, to their credit, they make it farther in the playoffs, but haven't won shit yet.
Well, and you also have to factor in how long are you gonna just bank on Sebastian Aho and that's it carrying your team right now? I mean, he's truly, of everybody on the ice, Sebastian Aho is the only one on Carolina this series that I was truly impressed with. Everybody else kind of looked deflated. Sebastian Aho looked like he never lost anything. So I don't know, man. It was a weird series. I will say, now we were right with our predictions. I thought Carolina would at least get a win this series, and they did. But I also thought they were going to put up a hell of a fight, and they absolutely didn't. I was kind of surprised by it. And the Panthers, there was a game we didn't have Reinhardt out there, we didn't have AJ Greer, and we didn't have Nico Mikkola.
It's the only game they won.
Yeah. So, you with a defense like Carolina's, you have to be able to shut a team like the Panthers down, regardless of if they're missing key players or not. And you can argue that, yeah, we all know Freddie Anderson is not a good goalie, but the defense didn't step up at all either. That's the big problem. I mean, Florida was just blowing their doors off and just bullying them.
Yeah, and truthfully, look, I know we talked about the turnover that the Hurricanes had on the defense last year, but I mean, as it sits right now, they have Jacob Slavin, who probably the best defensive defenseman in the league, but they have Orlov, I believe Orlov was banged up this playoffs too, which certainly doesn't help. And Chatfield got hurt, and then Gostisbehere, is Shane Gostisbehere, but they talked about the turnover they had going into the season, and the fact that they made it this far was impressive, but you're going to still be facing turnover going forward. I mean, Brett Burns is getting awfully close to retirement, I would have to imagine. Dmitry Orlov, you don't know how many good years you have left of him. Shane Gostisbehere, I'm actually surprised is still in the league. I never really thought he was that good after he left Philly. And
right.
But he, to his credit, he's been sticking around. And again, altogether, this group now, again, with a healthy Jalen Chatfield, was the best shutdown defensive group in the league. But you're going to continue to face turnover. But like up front, the team, okay, top line, Svechnikov, Aho, Jarvis, great line. All three of those guys are excellent hockey players. Their second line was Taylor Hall, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and Jackson Blake. Jackson Blake had a pretty good season this year, I thought. Taylor Hall, after the trade deadline, kind of found a groove, but then fell off a cliff in the playoffs. But Jesperi Kotkaniemi, are you kidding me? I mean, this guy should be a third or a fourth line center on a good team. He should not be a number 2 center. I know they overpaid to bring him there. And it sounded, and from all accounts, it seems like that was just a retaliatory fuck you offer sheet to Montreal after they tried to offer sheet Sebastian Aho. Obviously the Canes bring in Stankoven, and he's great. Now I'm glad they at least got something out of the ordeal with Natchez and Rantanen, but now they have to add some offensive weapons. That second line is not good enough. You need to have scoring all throughout your lineup. And Jackson Blake, again, I said, had a pretty good season, but he's going to need some support. His line mates cannot be Kotkaniemi and Taylor Hall. That's not good.
Yeah,
that's not a second line on a Stanley Cup contending team. That's not.
I forgot Taylor Hall was even on Carolina until I actually sat down to watch the series. So, and I don't want to take a dig at Taylor Hall because I do like Taylor Hall, but he's been kind of irrelevant. But
he won MVP. It's crazy. He won MVP like what 5-6 years ago.
yeah, I know, isn't that
And now
nuts?
he's just non-existent. Yeah,
But I mean,
he's had a weird career.
It is, and I mean, generally speaking, it's an unpredictable sport anyway. So I mean, anything can happen to anyone. But I do have to say, Game 5, that was looking early on like it was going to go Carolina's way. And honestly, it very well could have. But then you have the greatest two-way forward in the league right now, Alexander Barkov. He sets up that beautiful feed to Carter Verhaeghe, and Carter Verhaeghe fucking roofs it. And gives the Panthers the lead. I mean, and Carter Verhaeghe is also Captain Clutch too. So, I mean, but that's the Panthers have gotten a lot of good depth scoring, especially in this series. And I just think that this is what's going to set them up to have a legitimate chance to go back to back this year. But I don't want to touch on that yet. The whole thing is there's one thing that I saw a lot of comments on. And of course, as with every series, it's been the officiating. This series, I didn't really hate the officiating in this series. I thought it was pretty fair. That embellishment call on Kachuk, I thought was bullshit.
That was kind of lame. Here's the thing: it's easy to lose track of officiating in series, anyways. When there's this much of a valley between the skill levels, at least on display. I mean, other than Game 3, the Panthers were just beating them so badly. The officiating was an afterthought, so it might have been bad. There might have been a shitload of missed calls that we didn't even pay mind to because the games were so far apart that the Canes just never had a chance.
Right, and the calls that were made, I thought were very, very much justifiable. And Brenda Moore was voicing his displeasure with the calls in Game 5, but I'm like, they were going both ways, man. It's not like it was one-sided at all. Carolina.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Rod, but when you win one game out of 12 or out of 13 in the conference finals, the officiating is not the problem. Look in the fucking mirror, dude. Holy shit. Yeah, he's so brutal, isn't he? I can't fucking stand this guy. Well, I mean, is he fucking kidding me with that shit, dude? All he does is complain and not blink. That's the only two things he does.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. You can complain about all the penalties all you want, but the majority of the goals that the Panthers scored this series were even strength goals. I think that's worth mentioning. So whether you're a fan or the coach, whatever, you can sit here and complain about officiating all day, but the point is your team didn't score. And that's what I mean. Most of these games were blowouts for Florida. So
they were, yeah. And again, credit to Paul Maurice. He's a great coach and has a great team. So, I mean, you want to give credit where it's due. But Brenda Moore, this guy is just not good enough to get the job done. I've seen enough from him where if he doesn't coach in the league again, I'm okay with it because I don't think he's got it.
Well, and I agree with you. And I say this about many teams too, that Carolina has such a great fan base. They truly do. They show
big
up,
time.
I mean, it's one of the loudest arenas in the league, hands down. I mean, dude, you gotta, from the front office standpoint, you really have to look at this from the perspective of your fans. Your fans don't deserve to sit here and watch 3 straight conference final exits. I mean, they weren't like back to back to back, but I mean, they went 3 times and they lost 3 times. So at what point do you say, all right, maybe it's time to make a change in coaching? Because I do think with the right guy at the helm, I do think the team they have is actually a very good team. I mean,
they need a second line, though. They do, and they're going to need to have the conversation about how they replace Brent Burns and Dmitry Orlov.
Oh, yeah. Well, so how old is Brent Burns? He's about to be 40, right?
Yeah, he should be 40.
Okay. So, and I mean, I will say Burns was physical that game. Like Burns definitely doesn't look like a 40-year-old guy out there. I'll say that. But again, he's nearing the end of his career. He's at the end of his career. I'll say you got to find somebody else. But I think the biggest issue for them right now is get a goalie. That's where you need to go right now. Freddie Anderson has never been it for any of the teams he's played for. So
yeah, but the thing is, they just extended him. So you look at it from this angle. They're committed to this guy, even though it's not going to work, and we know that they are the clear. Eric Tulsky might be the only one who doesn't fucking realize this, but they're committed to this guy. So now you have to build around your team's biggest flaw. Okay, well, you have a good shutdown defense, and it sounds like Brent Burns still wants to play it. I mean, physically, it looks like he still can, but how many years does he have left before Father Time catches him? But
Right.
between needing to bolster the defense and needing this to a whole new second line, essentially, I mean, they got a lot of work to do this offseason, and I think not starting it because they extended him during the playoffs, but you essentially start your offseason by extending your goalie who's not good enough. It's not a good look. You have a coach who can't guide a team to victory against tough opponents. I mean, yes, they've won plenty of series in the playoffs under Brendan Moore, but they haven't won in the conference finals. Every time they're eliminated, it's to a team that's actually good. I mean, and we always say everybody in the playoffs is good, but you're talking about teams that are legitimate cup contending teams. I mean, heck, you look at the teams they lost to in the conference final. Now, granted, the Bruins in 2019 lost in the Stanley Cup final, Game 7. The Panthers a couple of years ago lost in the Stanley Cup final to Vegas. But these are good, like really good teams. And again, that valley of talent differential is just, there's so many things that irritate me about this team. I can't even put a complete thought together because I keep thinking of other things that I find wrong with the team.
Well, another thing that I think is worth mentioning is that the fans really got their hopes up for this series because, and look, I don't want to knock on Carolina's defense either, but Carolina really had a Mickey Mouse run to the conference final this year. They played a completely banged up New Jersey Devils team that they were banged up. That would have been a different series if that team was healthy. I can almost guarantee it. They probably still would have squeaked out the win, I think, but that would have been a much more I don't want to say brutal series, but a much more aggressive series.
Would have been way more competitive. Jack Hughes and Luke Hughes being out of the lineup was killer for them.
Correct. And then they come across Washington, and honestly, I thought Washington was going to smoke them, and Washington just absolutely collapsed. They looked flat the entire series.
Yeah, so, and but we did give them credit too. We gave them credit for shutting down the best offensive team in the league. We did.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
How did they follow it up? They got their absolute doors blown off by the Panthers.
Well, and I said this too before the conference final started. I was like, if there's a team in the East that can stop Florida right now, it's Carolina, and they came out and showed everything but that.
Yeah.
So I was a little disappointed in the series. Obviously, I'm over the moon with the outcome, but as far as the series itself goes, I was expecting a far more competitive series than what we got out of Carolina. I thought for sure. I mean, I did say Florida in 5 as a prediction, but generally speaking, I thought they were going to be a much harder team to beat. I didn't think Florida was going to come out and score 6 goals a game. But I mean, to their credit, that does show you how good of a team Florida is. And, and I underestimated them at the start of the playoffs myself. And I'm a Panthers fan, but I said, I don't think this team is going to be a team that runs it back this year, and that they've done nothing but prove me wrong. We've gotten a lot of depth scoring these playoffs. Brad Marchand, holy shit, man! He has been great for that third line.
Well, let's wait on the Panthers because they have a series still to play, so we'll get to them.
You know what?
A while.
You got a good point, yeah.
Because I do want to close this season on the Hurricanes with some kind of conclusive thought here. The reality is we kind of know what they're looking at going forward. They're going to keep Freddie Anderson. Brendan Moore's going to stay on as the coach. So what can they do to right this ship? If they run it back with the same group, they have that same defensive core. They'll probably still be one of the best defensive teams in the league next year. But the only thing they haven't done that they can still go out and do, because they haven't committed. Again, they've committed to, it seems like, this defensive core, their goalie, the coach. They absolutely have to throw as much money as they can at some of these big name free agents. You think of Marner, you even think maybe of Nikolai Ehlers, Brock Besser, and I know Brock Besser's health is a concern, but they need scoring, whether it's regular season or not. They need more scoring, and there are going to be guys out there that can offer it to them. And because, again, they've doubled down, it seems like they're keeping Brendan Moore as the coach, and they're going to keep Freddie Anderson in goal. This is their option to try and get better. So if they're going to run this back, they better hope to God they get one of these big name free agents, because otherwise this group's going to have the same result or worse next year.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think in addition to goaltending issues, though, I think it's time to make a change at head coach. I just do. And I know
I do 100%.
Canes fans, I was putting this in comment sections too, saying, if they don't make it through the conference final this year, that Brendan Moore is gone, and everybody was just firing back at me that's a stupid take. I don't think it is. I think it's the right move at this point. Because where else can you go from here?
Well, and if they would have lost, like if this would have been a 7-game, every game's tight as hell, they're scoring a lot, they're
Right.
playing a good structured game, and they're just not getting the bounces. I can see running it back because again, this was a kind of a retool year, but they just look so much worse. They look so lost. They look so outclassed up and down the ice. I truly believe like it's a coaching issue. It really is, but they seem to have doubled down on this. And we're not going to, by the way, we're not going to talk about the handshake line thing with Maurice and Brindamore, because not only is that the dumbest shit I've ever seen, but it's just who fucking cares?
Yeah.
I know the handshake's the tradition. I think Paul Maurice is kind of being a pain in the ass about it, but
Yeah.
who gives a shit really? There's so many more important things. It took away so much from the fact that the Canes had the most disappointing end to a season that I've seen in half a decade. When you think back, like the 2019 Lightning probably is still one of the most in recent memory, but
oh yeah,
this is one of the most disappointing ends to a season I think we've seen in quite some time, and that stupid handshake thing took away from it. So I don't even want to get into that. I just want to focus on the fact that this team, there needs to be more done than what will be done, if that makes any sense.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. So yeah, like you said, tough way to end the season if you're Carolina, but work on it in the offseason, see what you can do next year.
All right, well, let's go to the West, where, you know, as a hockey fan and a guy that, like I said before, loves storylines, I think, you know, Rantanen going to Dallas and all the chaos and knocking off the Avalanche and going on a historic scoring pace is great. As somebody who does not like the Stars, I could not be more satisfied with the way their season ended.
I just realized what it says under your name. Thrilled that Dallas is eliminated.
Yeah. Look, okay, so I'll go at this from a neutral perspective because I could sit here and shit on the Stars, but I look at the team I cheer for. So we'll look at this from both sides. First of all, congrats to the Oilers for winning this series. The Oilers, who I believe I picked to lose every single round of the playoffs so far, have proven me wrong. And that's not because I don't want them to win. I've been hoping for a rematch since the start of this season, a Stanley Cup final rematch. So I'm ecstatic that the Oilers are going back to the final, but I just feel bad because I just kept picking them to lose. And with good reason every time. You know, I felt like it was with good reason. But you look at this series, I cannot believe the Oilers just beat the brakes off them like they did. I mean, it really, there were some moments, you know, you think of how they blew it in game one and you're like, oh shit, this isn't good. And now granted, the Oilers walk away saying, hey, we just played 40 minutes of great hockey and got in our own heads in the third. And you know what? They, to their credit, they responded. Games 2 and 3, they come in and blow the doors off of Dallas, and or game 4 as well, excuse me. And yeah, it never really, it really just never felt close. It never felt close other than game 1.
Right. And even the start of that game didn't feel close. Like,
no.
I mean, the fact that Dallas came back, I went to sleep, I think a little over maybe halfway through that game, because I was like, all right,
game 5?
No. Whatever game 1, when Dallas came back and won.
Okay,
yeah. I went to sleep halfway through that game because I was like, well, Edmonton's got this one locked up. And then I woke up and saw Dallas came back and won, and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, I went to sleep in game 1 when it was 3-1. I'm like, wow, Dallas is ready to go out to the pasture this game. But I just, to the Oilers' credit, again, they really talked about it in their interviews, and they knew they played well, but they knew they let one get away. And the concern you get in a 7-game series when you give one away so badly like that is if you end up losing the series in like a game 7, you're like, God, this could have turned the whole series if we started the series better. But I mean, they didn't lose after that either. they come out game 2, they play an outstanding game. I just felt their structure, the whole series was good. Really, it was. But Stuart Skinner, you know, shutting it down. I mean, just being a brick wall. I mean, again, he's so bipolar with his results in these games. But Stuart Skinner was just the absolute story in game 2. You just can't beat him. And also, for whatever reason, during game 2, I was just watching and just thinking, man, the Stars really need to go back to their old jerseys that had the waist stripes and arm stripes that were shaped like a star. You know, and I don't like the Stars as a team, obviously, but as a hockey fan, boy, those jerseys they wear are fucking ugly as hell. They just are. They're so boring. And the star-shaped ones were so cool. I think they should go back to those. I wrote that in my game notes from game 2. That they should go back to those jerseys. But anyways, again, Stuart Skinner was outstanding. I think it was a perfect response by the team. You let one slip away from you in game 1 and you come out, you play a super disciplined game, a tight checking defensive game. Your goalie slams the door. Like you feel good about yourself, and then they go home. And oh my God, did they beat the brakes off of Dallas in games 3 and 4? I mean, the offense was potent. Ottinger, and I felt like the poor guy was not getting any help from his defense this series anyways, but he didn't look great. But again, he was just getting burned by his defense. I mean, Robertson to that point, Rantanen and Wyatt Johnson were practically invisible. Hintz, that's the game Hintz gets hurt. Or no, was he hurt the game before? I don't remember. But
no, I think it was that game.
No, he sat out that game. He sat out that one because the slash was in game 2, which we later found out was a broken foot. I can't believe he was able to skate.
Yeah.
But he's playing with a broken foot, so that doesn't help. But that was all Oilers. And then game 4, Stuart Skinner again, just shutting it down. I know the officiating, especially in game 4, was really bad. And then, of course, that's the game Marchment makes the hit on Zach Hyman that knocks him out for the playoffs, unfortunately, which I hate Mason Marchment, so I'm glad his season's over.
Yeah, but you really feel for
Zach Hyman, dude. Holy shit, yeah, just an absolute warrior. Guys had over 100 hits in the playoffs, just an absolute unit.
Yeah, just a gem of a human being.
Yeah, just an awesome guy. So really, that sucked for him. But again, the Oilers, and again, same with game 3. Ottinger's just not getting the help he needs. I know he could have been much better, but overall in these playoffs, he's been really good. And it seems like the only times he's faltered are when his defense has just completely been non-existent in front of him. I mean, guys are getting in 1-3, getting in behind the defense is just not good. I think it was Janmark that had the goal where the freeze frame of him as he's taking the shot, he's got 3 defenders that aren't within like 4 feet of him. I mean, it's just embarrassing. And yes, you do need a save, but when it's every single rush and your defenders are getting their doors blown off, it's not okay. I don't know if Heiskanen was 100% healthy. I didn't read anything about him not being 100%, but I felt like he was a step behind. I thought Thomas Harley was actually their best defenseman in this series. I was really impressed with his season. He played well all year. He played great at the Four Nations. He played... Again, I thought a good Stanley Cup playoffs, but really outside of him, I didn't think any of Dallas's defenders were that good. I mean, they couldn't even play Matt Dunn because he's so bad at hockey now. Ilya Lyubushkin was worthless in the game they threw him in. And so other than Heiskanen and Lindell and Harley, there just wasn't much there. And, poor Andre, they get shelled. And when they went back to Dallas, I don't know how you felt, but when they went back to Dallas, I'm like, all right, Dallas has a chance to whip the reins and bring this thing in, and they're on home ice. This is their chance to climb back into this. And I know they're down 3-1, but you feel like there could be a turning point here. I don't know how you felt though. What were you thinking when they were down 3-1 going to Dallas?
Well, I thought for sure they were going to be able to. Excuse me. I thought for sure they were going to be at least be able to get that win at home, especially again, that's another building, extremely loud to play in. Those
great fans there, except they don't sit down and the camera angle sucks, so you can't see anything.
Yeah,
but really good fans, except the Glassbanger guy.
Yeah, I really thought going into that game that Edmonton was going to have a tough time there, and it looked like it didn't even phase them.
So, and let's get to that too. So they come out, the Oilers score on their first 2 shots of the game. DeBoer calls timeout, brings the group to the bench. Timeout's over, so everybody skates back into the ice, and Ottinger gets almost to his crease, and DeBoer, and I think it was Adam Wilde from the Steve Dangle podcast, said like an umpire in baseball just gave him the hook, like kicking him out of the game. DeBoer screams at Ottinger to get off the ice. He looked, just the look of disgust he gives Ottinger to get to the bench. And the shot that everybody's seen by now of Jake Ottinger sitting on the bench next to Ray Ferraro was breaking down how everything has gone wrong for Dallas. You feel for the kid. I thought Peter DeBoer got his shit kicked in this series, man.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, man, and I don't know what show it was because you've listened, we listen to all these different talking head shows, but somebody said there's a reason Peter DeBoer hasn't won a Stanley Cup yet.
Yeah.
And man, I'm telling you, he had a rough take on Jake Ottinger in the post-game presser for this, and we can't play the audio. I don't believe.
No.
I think it's copyrighted, but
he threw him under the fucking bus.
DeBoer throws Jake Ottinger under the bus, runs him over with the bus, and then backs over what's left of Jake Ottinger. To talk about how Ottinger hasn't won against Edmonton going back to last year's playoffs, 6 to 7 games or whatever. I just think, look, yes, I agree. First of all, he didn't win, but he had no defensive help, man. There was no structure in front of him. And to the Oilers' credit, they roll all 4 lines really well. They're one of the fastest teams in the league. Like they move the puck quickly, and it's just the way they play their game. And having 97 and 29 there doesn't hurt either. But Ottinger got no help, and all you could do is feel for the kid who just, again, had no chance. You go watch every goal the Oilers scored in that series, and I can guarantee you probably 90% of them, you're like, how the fuck was he going to stop that? So it's a terrible look from a coach when he throws your franchise goalie under the bus, who just extended for 8 years there, by the way.
Yeah.
Your coach, who another guy who has not got it done in the conference finals with this team 3 years. What is it? 3 years in a row now or whatever. He has not got it done in the conference finals with this team. He throws probably the only guy who is worth shit in this last round of the playoffs. He throws him under the bus. And instead of ridiculing the anemic offense, you bring in Rantanen, who goes on a historic scoring pace, gets nothing in the conference finals. Robertson doesn't get shit done. He was the only guy that did anything after like game 3, I think, or from game 3 and beyond. He was like the only guy that scored. Wyatt Johnston was awful these playoffs, which, again, as a guy that doesn't like the Stars, I don't mind seeing all these guys fall off. But from an objective standpoint, where the fuck were all these guys that were supposed to be this elite offense? I mean, this is a polar opposite of last year's Dallas offense. And we talked plenty of times about how they would have to change their offensive game a little bit without Joe Pavelski, but they were just invisible. They lost the special teams war with Edmonton, which is crazy when you think about how bad Edmonton's kill had been. But they lose the special teams war. The offense goes invisible. The defense gets his doors blown off every game. And the only guy who's keeping it from being 10-1 every game is the one guy that gets blamed. I cannot believe it as a hockey fan. And I will be stunned if Peter DeBoer is still the coach of this team, because now you've got a very clear rift between goalie and coach. You just extended the goalie, who's not the problem, by the way. He's a great goalie, and I'm mad he doesn't play for his hometown Minnesota Wild. But you have this franchise goalie, one of the best goalies on the planet, and you have this coach who has done jack shit to prove that he's a good enough coach to win a Stanley Cup, because he has not done it, and he throws that superstar under the bus. To me, there's a big problem there, and I think it's solved by firing Pete DeBoer and bringing in a coach who's worth a damn.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, him pulling Ottinger, that's the kind of shit that just doesn't belong in the NHL. And I mean, to me, that right there is the one move that should cause him to lose his job. I was blown away that he did that. I was surprised at how mad he was acting towards Ottinger. I was like, you got your whole team out there that's been a complete disaster on the ice, and you're going to blame it on, like you said, this franchise goalie who's not the problem. The whole thing was just disgusting to me. And that is where you completely blew your chance at coming back in that game, is pulling out Ottinger from the net.
And look, Jim Nill is one of the best general managers in the league. I truly believe he is. He's going to have to make a tough decision here. And I don't know if it's tough. It's not tough from this is a very obvious what the next step is, but it's a tough from a people standpoint. It's a guy you've worked very closely with, as you've built one of the best, most consistent teams in the league the last half decade. And so it's tough to let go of something like that. I think DeBoer's only been there 3 or 4 years, but you've worked very closely with this guy. You build a tight relationship. And so the people side of it is it's hard to just kick that guy out the door. But when a guy goes out on national television and buries the only good player in that series on your team and doesn't make mention of the fact that the offense was, again, non-existent, the defense was terrible, I think the solution is obvious. And for the Stars, again, I'm happy as a Wild fan. I'm happy their season's done, and I'm glad Matt Duchene still doesn't have a cup. But it's just frustrating because from a hockey standpoint, you look at a team that's this good and to be held back by piss poor coaching is sad. It's a lot like what we just talked about with the Hurricanes. It's just something's got to go here, and it seems like it's the coach. The Stars, especially the Stars, because I truly believe, even though I'm not crazy about their bottom pairings on defense, I truly believe this team is constructed to win a Stanley Cup and that it probably should have won this year. To have this disappointing of a result in the conference final with a group that's this stacked. And again, I know Hintz was injured too. I'm not going to dog on Rupe Hintz. The fact that he's playing with a broken foot was incredible. But the rest of the team, this team is good enough that they should probably be on their way to the Stanley Cup final. 3 years in a row with the same result in the conference final, 2 against the same opponent. I think it's time for changes in Dallas behind the bench.
Yeah.
If I'm running the show, and again, I'm not a GM, but if I'm running the show, you clean out the whole coaching staff, you come back with a refreshed group. And even if you don't clean out the whole staff, you got to change head coaches now, because DeBoer basically went on national TV and cried like a fucking baby and was not even right to be complaining about what he was complaining about. I just thought it was terrible.
Yeah, it was a total dirtbag move.
Yeah. For 2 teams I don't give a shit about, I'm really leaning into them here. But and I'm as referring to the Hurricanes and the Stars, not the Stars and the Oilers.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
But it's just frustrating. They were too good to have this bad of a result, and I think DeBoer's got to be the guy that goes. It's similar to Brenda Moore. You've had 3 conference finals to get the job done, and you've swung and missed every time. So I think that, to me, I know it's easier said than done, but man, it just seems like there's got to be a better fit out there. Unfortunately for the Stars, even if they want to go that route, and if they do go that route, all the good head coaching candidates are gone really now. I mean, all the big names like Sullivan and Quenneville and Talk, all those guys are hired now.
Yeah. Oh, that's kind of the thing is like, yeah, DeBoer needs to go, but I mean, who are you going to bring in at this point? John Tortorella?
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. To that point, it almost is like, God, they're almost better off keeping him, but there's got to be an attitude change and a culture change there. And again, Dallas will have, I don't think they've got a ton of cap room, but there's going to be some tweaks there. Look, I think Matt Dumba and Ilya Lyubushkin and Cody Ceci, I didn't even get into how bad Cody Ceci is. But you take those 3 guys and you throw them in the Gulf of Mexico and just leave it as it is. Again, I've mostly praised their top 3 defenders, Harley, Heiskanen, and Lindell. I think Nils Lundqvist will, hopefully when he comes back next season from injury, hopefully he has a good year, but there's some tweaking to be done there. I did think Petrovic stepped up and played pretty well given the situation he was coming into for the Stars, but I also don't think that's a long-term solution. I just think that's a vet who came in and played a role perfectly as he needed to, but I don't think that's a guy that you're keeping for 82 games and getting effective results out of. And that's not a dig at him. This league has just passed him up, I think.
That's correct. I agree with you.
I think he played his role very well. He was one of the few, him and Harley, again, among the only guys that I thought did what was expected of them. I don't want to dunk on Heiskanen too much because he came back from injury. And again, you don't know how healthy he is, but I don't know, man. The Stars do need to make some tweaks defensively, but overall, this should be one of the best teams in the league. And it's kind of, to me, it truly is surprising that they aren't going to the Stanley Cup final. And that's not to take away any credit from the Oilers, who are unbelievable. But again, as a hockey fan, it's just frustrating that these teams that look like they could be so close to having a championship formula still seem so far away. And the Hurricanes specifically, but the Stars too, because it's almost like this team, again, looks so good on paper. And all of a sudden you're like, all right, well, what the fuck went wrong that we could barely win 1 game? I mean, they essentially got swept if you take away the fact that the Oilers shit the bed in 1 period that cost them game 1. I mean, other than that, this was basically a sweep. So it's like, oh, where do they even go from here? I don't know.
Hey, real quick, this isn't, it has to do with the Oilers, but it's not related to what we're talking to. But just real quick, for the life of me, I don't know why I'm having a brain fart here, but what is Janmark's first name?
Matthias.
Okay, okay. Dude, I was sitting here. I just got lost in my little ADHD brain thinking about him scoring that breakaway goal on Bobrovsky last year. And I was just like, fuck, what's his first name? I can't remember it. So
the janitor. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, I digress. That was just bothering me. But yeah, I would compare these 2 series. I'd say they were very similar in a lot of ways as far as the play from Dallas and Carolina goes. As 2 teams that completely underperformed compared to what the expectations were for them. I mean, truly, if they played to their standards, these are both two series that could have gone 6-7 games easily. I more expected it out of Dallas and Edmonton to be a much longer series. I thought this series was going to be a bloodbath, and it just turned into a bitch slap, for lack of a better term. So
Yeah.
I'm obviously I'm ecstatic that the Oilers are going to the final again. I do recall when we did the preview for the conference finals, you and I had the exact opposite opinions. I said I wanted Dallas to win, but I thought Edmonton would, and you said you wanted Edmonton to win, but you thought Dallas would. And I mean, it just goes to show you, no matter how good a team looks, you truly never know what's actually going to happen until all is said and done. And I think that's why this sport is so great, is just because of how unpredictable it truly is.
Yeah, I would have believed you if you would have told me that the Oilers would win the series. I don't know if I would believe you if you would have told me that they would have absolutely kicked the shit out of the Stars all 5
Right.
games.
Yeah.
And the fact that they beat them in 5. By the way, quick shout out Jeff Skinner, first career playoff goal after 1,000 years in the league. He's finally got his first playoff run. Game number 2. That was only the second game of the playoffs he played, was game 5 of the conference final. He was a healthy scratch after game 1 against LA and just hadn't played since. But again, with the injury to Hyman, the timing was perfect for the Oilers because Ekholm came back, which we'll get to in a second. But congrats, Jeff Skinner. Long, winding road to get to into the playoffs. But you know what? This first playoff run has been on a team that's going to the Stanley Cup final. So I think if you asked him now, he'd probably be very happy with where he's at.
Absolutely.
But again, just to put a bow on the conference finals, it's to see Dallas and Carolina go out the way they did stinks. I think the road ahead for Dallas is a lot easier. I think the fixes are a little simpler. Carolina, they could have been a lot simpler given all the cap space they had, but they've already doubled down with moves that I don't agree with as far as keeping the coach and keeping that god-awful goalie. So I think the Hurricanes in a vacuum had the easier path, but they chose to take the wrong route. And so now they've made their road ahead more difficult. The Stars, let's put it this way. I think the Stars will probably be a favorite in the West again next season. I will not be surprised if next June we're looking at the Stars who are in the conference final again, because they're just that good. For all the faults they had, they're so good that it's hard to see them not making it here. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
And for the Hurricanes, it's hard to feel bad. I feel bad for the fans, but I have no love lost for the organization, which just keeps kicking itself in the dick at every chance it gets.
Well, I think this is a good spot to wrap this segment of the show up. We will take another quick break before we come back and talk to you about the Stanley Cup final preview. Before we go to our next break, we have a question, and it actually relates to the Dallas Stars a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and read that off. I'm going to go ahead and read it off right now. And I'm very interested to hear what Brian has to say. So this is from our good friend and loyal listener of the show, Don. He goes, "Here is my crazy take of the week. Trade Ottinger for Swayman. First, I understand they both have no movement clauses, but the way the Stars took Ottinger out of Game 5 and Swayman seemingly disgruntled with the Bruins could mean a fresh start for both. I am certain this is not a thing, but wouldn't it be wild? Also, good job, Brian, on the solo show. Maybe Andrew is holding you back. Just kidding. Always look forward to the show. Don."
I'll just say this, Don. I was begging Andrew to do that show with me because I felt like shit. I was hoping he could take the reins and I would have typed him a script and I could have just sat there and looked at the camera while he talked, but I powered through it.
He did beg me, and I do have to say, Brian, I got to tell you, I always say this on the show and in general, I always think I hold Brian back, or not that I hold him back, but of the two of us on the show, Brian is the one who carries the show, and that's not lost on me. I mean, he's just too knowledgeable, but yeah, no, this is
the only thing that holds me back is my small brain, and that's it. My terrible takes.
Well, if your brain is small and your takes are terrible, then we're not even going to talk about me. So,
well, Don, thanks again for writing in. That trade. First of all, that trade would be absolutely nuts, even though there's 0% chance it happens. Look, I'll be objective about this because I love to play devil's advocate. For Jeremy Swayman, yes, it was a rough year with the Bruins. Everything that could go wrong did. Part of that was his own doing with the mess with the contract, but he rebounds. He has a great showing at the World Championships. They win gold. He had a great tournament. he's got a chance this summer. He's got to have a good summer, be working out a lot, stay in his groove. He's going to have a whole training camp ahead of him with the Bruins this time instead of signing the night before the season starts or the day after it starts, whatever it was. I think it was the day after the season started because Korpisalo got caved in on opening night.
Yep.
But he's going to have a full training camp with him. It's going to be a totally different group, but he's going to have time to learn how to play behind the defense group he's going to have. Again, McAvoy and Lindholm will be healthy, so he'll spend about a third to half the game with his best defenseman in front of him, which will make a world of difference again. I think Swayman will rebound perfectly in Boston. I don't know if Ottinger's contract even has a no move or no trade clause in it. I don't know if he's old enough yet. I think you have to be 28. But regardless, Ottinger, I think he's the guy that needs to stay in Dallas if they're going to have any chance going forward. It wasn't his best season, I'll say that, but he is such a good goalie. He is so gifted, and he just needs some help. He needs some help defensively. His guys have got to play in front of him. Any goalie's going to look like shit with Dallas's defense in front of them, the way they were playing, not the way they can play, but the way they were playing. I don't know that a change of scenery helps either of these guys. I truly think, well, for Swayman, again, having a full training camp and a structured, non-chaotic dressing room will help. And I think this next generation of the Bruins, this will be a really telling sign of where they are, at least as a group, is how they start next season. But I think just a refreshed outlook on the team, I think that'll help Jeremy Swayman a lot, especially with how well he played at the Four Nations. The World Championship. That's the kind of hockey Jeremy Swayman can play. So I don't think he needs to leave Boston. Jake Ottinger's clearly good enough to get the Stars into a deep playoff run. I think the change that the Stars need to make is just, again, with a coach. So,
but that would be a fucking wild trade, man.
That would be one that would shake up the league for sure. Boy, that would probably push the Bruins to being a favorite in the Atlantic, even as messy as their team is right now. And again, I think Swayman, if he went to Dallas, would be great too. I don't think either of those guys would get worse going to those teams. I think they both would be just fine. But I think that's part of the reason it kind of feels like it's not the right move to make, because I don't think either of them gets specifically worse or better, that's kind of it would just be chaotic, and it'd be fun, and I would love it if it did happen. But Don, thanks as always for writing in, though. That was a good one. Andrew said before the show started that we had a question from you, and it was related to Jake Ottinger and Jeremy Swayman, and I thought it was going to be the route of who's starting in the Olympics, which the answer is probably still Connor Hellebuck, if you ask me. But all right.
I also, before I read any of your actual input, Don, all I read was the line trade Ottinger for Swayman. I was like, oh no, Don, you gotta put the crack pipe down, man. But then I read the rest of it. I was like, oh, okay, I see what he's getting at here. So all right, we're good, man.
Actually, speaking of Jake Ottinger trades, I'm thinking trade him to the Wild for Freddie Gaudreau. I think that's a fair deal for both sides. Stars get good forward depth. The Wild get a good goalie. And I would like that trade.
I bet you would. But Don, man, he's listened to every episode of this show from its inception. He writes in all the time. We love you, man. Well, I can't tell you how much we appreciate it.
All right.
So we are going to take another quick break, and then we will be right back to talk to you and preview the Stanley Cup final. This is the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast.
All right, and welcome back. So we've come a long way this season. First episode of this season, well, the first official one, obviously, because we did a little memorial piece on Johnny before the season started. But I don't remember what episode it was, but prior to this season, we spoke, and something to the effect of, wouldn't be surprising to see Panthers and Oilers rematch in the Stanley Cup final was said. We've come all this way. These hundreds into the thousands of games played, regular season and playoffs, have taken us all the way here, all the way through the conference finals. We only stare ahead at the Stanley Cup final. It's a rematch. Florida Panthers, Edmonton Oilers. It's getting started Wednesday night. Andrew, your Panthers won the Stanley Cup last year. I know all season, on and off the show, you talked about how you perhaps had some doubts, and there's still work to be done, but the Panthers have made it back to the Stanley Cup final for a third year. How are you feeling?
There's not really a word I can use to describe how I'm feeling. I'll say elated, I guess. I'm over the moon. I mean, and I've said this on the show before. My wife and we've been watching this team since they were talking about relocating them. I remember going to the games back when it was it's currently Amerant Bank Arena, but it used to be, when we started going to the games, it was BB&T Center. And I remember when they couldn't draw 2,000 people to that arena, man. And just to see how far this team has come, it's literally a dream come true. And it really goes to show how much chemistry plays a role in a team's success, as well as good coaching and good goaltending. Yeah, if you remember when they brought Paul Maurice on board and traded Jonathan Huberdeau for Matthew Tkachuk, I was shitting on him for both of those decisions, and I am proud to say that I could not have been more wrong. It's been such a great ride. Even when we lost in 23 to Vegas, you're still elated that the team made it. To go back 3 years in a row is obviously no easy feat by any means, and they've managed to do it again. And I even said going into the playoffs, I still don't think Florida is going to run it back. And now here we are with the real chance. We're here. I can't believe it. And this is going to be the rematch of the century. I can't even find words. I'm so excited.
And this was before we started watching hockey, but you go back and you watch old, or at least I do. I go back and watch old playoff highlights and stuff. The only thing I can even somewhat compare this to is the Penguins and Red Wings in 2009 when they rematched. I mean, you look at a Red Wings team that was stacked with Hall of Fame players on it, and they had just come off, of course, winning a Stanley Cup. And you look at the Penguins, who were just as loaded up, a young Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, Marc-Andre Fleury. I believe, Pascal Dupuis was there. They had a really young Jordan Staal there, which it's still weird to think Jordan Staal ever played for the Penguins. Just a stacked group that year. They go out and they get big Bill Guerin at the deadline, and just an absolute war in that Stanley Cup final. And of course, that one ends with Marc-Andre Fleury making one of the most iconic saves in the history of the sport on Nick Lidstrom. And that's the only thing I can compare this to. This is two fantastic teams going right back at it with each other. The way we got here, I think, is unexpected. I don't think with how this Oilers season played out, I don't think most people would have pegged them to come into the playoffs and just kick the shit out of everybody. But to this point, the Oilers have only lost 4 games in the playoffs. They're 12-4, which they started off by losing their first 2. So to be 12-2 since then is incredible. Or they lose the first 2, or they went 1-2 to start. I don't remember now, but they have just been on an unreal run here. And for the Panthers too, to their credit, they started the playoffs. I picked them to lose to Tampa Bay, and what's funny is I did the same thing last year. So I'm gonna stop making that mistake now.
Yeah.
But to their credit, they came out. A lot of people had Tampa beating them. I mean, there was a lot of people who were like, bro, it's still the Panthers. And so they wisely picked the Panthers in round 1. I wasn't one of them. But I just, Tampa felt like they were on a heater too. But the Panthers come out, they steamroll the Lightning. Then in round 2 against the Maple Leafs, they were 10 minutes away from being down 3-0 in a series. Yeah. And instead they get that game tied up quick. Marchand wins it in overtime, and they never look back, really. They win 4 of the final 5 games in that series. And they just looked after game 2, or I don't want to say after game 2, after the comeback in game 3 against the Leafs, they were just in the driver's seat. A 6-1 win in game 5 and game 7. They come out in the conference finals and just absolutely demolish the Hurricanes to nobody's surprise. And they look as good and as dangerous as last year. The big thing for them that's the question mark is Tkachuk, because he's very clearly still banged up. Yes. And my only other concern for the Panthers is that Sam Bennett can't fucking win a faceoff. But other than that, they look great. Their first line is rolling. Their third line with Lundell, Luostarinen, and Marchand is playing like a second line. I know there was some concern about Luostarinen's health too. I didn't see anything about an injury for him, so that must have gone over my head, and I didn't even remember it until just now as we're talking about it. But overall, they've been rolling their lines really well. The defense has been playing great. Bob has been unbelievable. I mean, to me, if the Panthers run this all the way back, you got to get Bob his Conn Smythe, because I was thinking he was going to win the Conn Smythe last postseason, but they obviously opted to give it to McDavid, but it should have been his. And I'll tell you what, if the Panthers manage to run this back, I don't see a world where he's not the Conn Smythe winner.
Well, I'll tell you this about Bob. As far as last year goes, I think if the Panthers if the Oilers hadn't made it go 7 games, the Conn Smythe would have gone to Bob. No
Yeah,
question.
that's fair. I mean, the fact that they pushed that, and a lot of it was on the shoulders of McDavid too. So
Correct.
that it is fair. I'm not saying Connor McDavid didn't deserve to win.
No, he did.
I don't
for
want to
sure.
twist that way, but I just thought with being the winning team and Bob, other than those 3 games of the final they lost, Bob was so good. I mean, he was so much of the reason they got there. And
Right.
but you know what? It is what it is. I mean, I think he'll take a Stanley Cup over a Conn Smythe. So
Correct. Now,
you go ahead.
I was to say regarding Bob, I think, last year it was, well, in order for him to get into the Hall of Fame, he's got to get a Stanley Cup. And you and I have talked about this. If the Panthers win it this year, but now Bob is moving into that conversation of one of the best of all time.
Yeah.
So,
this will absolutely catapult him. And so I have a whole novel written out, but once we make our predictions, but go ahead.
I was going to say, before I forget this, because I saw this online and I thought it was a good question and I liked seeing people's opinions on it. So the Tampa Bay Lightning went to the Cup 3 consecutive years, won 2 of them. The Panthers are now going to their 3rd consecutive Cup, looking to win their 2nd one. And now I want to preface this by saying, look, I understand the Lightning played 2 shortened seasons. A lot of us think they were bullshit cups, but regardless, they went and did what they had.
04.
Well, they went and did what they had to with what they were given that season and still won the cup. So I'm going to digress from there. But the question was, which team has had the better run, the Panthers or the Lightning? And I say the Panthers already, because they did it with 382 game seasons. But additionally, I say, especially if the Panthers win it this year, it's going to be the Panthers.
If that's the big thing for me, the Panthers must win it this year in order
Correct.
for it to be them. I'm impressed with their run overall, but it's a results-driven business. If they win the Stanley Cup this year, absolutely it's them. But if not, it's still the Lightning. And first of all, I am a firm Lightning certified hater. I don't believe any of their 3 cups are legitimate. I 1,000,000% agree with you on, look, for the COVID stuff, you can only play with what's given to you. I mean, they couldn't go and make it an 82 game schedule to make it quote unquote more legitimate. You have to play what's in front of you. So 1,000% credit to them, especially with how chaotic the world was at that time too. It's just crazy to have the mental fortitude to hold it all together and go on a run like that. So I don't want to take that away from them, but it's kind of like the Blackhawks lockout cup. I'm like, But I am a firm hater of their 2004 cup, because that fucking puck went in and they should have lost overtime game 6, and that should have been the Calgary Flames with Jerome McGinley holding that bitch up. But that's an argument we can't have, because again, if you look on the Stanley Cup and for the 03-04 season, it says Tampa Bay Lightning. So you can't argue with the results. But to bring this back to the Panthers, if they win the Stanley Cup this year, this stretch of 3 seasons to me is better than the Bolts 3-year run.
I'm on board with you. And
it doesn't make the Panthers franchise history more rich, but it makes this run better than the run the Lightning just had. I think the Panthers have had harder competition, again, full seasons, and I don't know, man. They just look so much more dialed in, and man, I don't know. And again, that's subjective too. Again, it's tough with the COVID thing, and again, I do want to credit them for holding it all together in one of the toughest times of our generation as far as real life goes. But to me, the Panthers they just look like a team on a mission every game. They just do. And so if they win now, it's hard to make an argument for the Lightning's 3-year run they had.
But, well, yeah, I would agree with you on that. Like I said, if the Panthers don't win it this year, then yeah, obviously I'm going to say
then it's still the Lightning. Yeah,
it's
for
sure.
100%. Yeah, you can't take that away.
Correct. But again, back to where we're supposed to be now, with the Panthers and Oilers moving forward, and what I promise will be the rematch of the century, regardless of the outcome. I think the Oilers are far better positioned this year than they were last season. As far as the Stanley Cup final goes, I think this is going to be a much different series this year.
Well, let's look at how we got here then for the Oilers, because we kind of just went down the gauntlet with the Panthers too. But with the Oilers, the way they started this year, everyone's like, all right, so much for that repeat matchup we were hoping for. And, it was justified. Those opinions were justified. The Oilers didn't look like they really had it. But again, that offense is just so unbelievably potent. They just score at will. And it's like the 2022 Avalanche. They just can't be stopped scoring. And so they get into the playoffs. Everybody writes them off in the playoffs, except for a select few, people who will, for the rest of time, tell you they were right about the 2025 Oilers. Everybody writes them off. It seemed LA was it was an absolute wagon coming into the playoffs. They were the best home team in the league by a country mile. They had home ice in the series. They come out to start the series and just clobber the Oilers, and it's like, all right, well, this is pretty much over for the Oil, isn't it? And so the Oilers make a switch and goal. Pickard comes in. He's great for them, gets them through that series, then gets them part of the way through the series against Vegas and gets injured. And so Skinner comes back in, and what does he have? Shutouts. His first 3 wins once he returned were shutouts. He had 2 shutouts in a row, then a lost game against Vegas, and then a shutout to close them out in game 5.
Right.
And then he comes in, and so against LA, the Kings again really fumbled the bag there. They were in the driver's seat, and just everything that could go wrong for them went wrong. The messed up challenge, not clearing the puck out of the zone, just everything that went wrong for LA, or that could have gone wrong for LA, did. And so Edmonton took full advantage and full marks to them. But then they come into round 2 against Vegas, and Vegas is rolling. Games 4, 5, and 6 against the Wild in round 1, they turn it on. So they looked like an absolute machine coming into that round against Edmonton. And so my thought was Vegas is going to run right over these guys now, because they're going. Aiden Hill's going. Their big guys are going. Well, the Oilers shut all of those guys down and blew them out of the water pretty much every game except game 5, which was a 1-0 overtime game. And so they come into the conference finals, and it's like, well, now the Stars, now Rantanen's on a historic pace. The offense is loaded up. Heiskanen's coming back. He's going to be healthy. The Oilers still don't have Ekholm yet. Jake Ottinger's obviously a better goalie than Stuart Skinner, even though he's playing well. And in this series, I definitely felt like there was a much more even split of people thinking either the Oilers are going to win or thinking the Stars are going to win. But to the Oilers' credit, like we just talked about for half an hour, they just came out and clobbered them every game. Even the game they lost, I mean, they put up 3 early goals, and they just looked so much better. And obviously their discipline cost them that one. But every single series outside of their slow start against LA, every series, they've just looked so much better than everybody that they've played. The offense is so good. The defense has been good. Troy Stetcher came in in Ekholm's absence. He replaces Ty Emberson in the lineup too. He comes in and he's just an absolute machine. He was so good for them all playoffs long alongside Nurse, and it kind of stinks that he helps get them here. And now that Ekholm's back, he's probably not going to see a ton of ice time, or if any at all. But now the Oilers are fully healthy. Well, until the Zach Hyman injury, but the defense is fully healthy. Skinner's playing seemingly at the top of his game, and they roll all 4 lines as good as anybody. So even though I didn't pick them to win any of the series they were in getting to this point, in hindsight, it is so easy to see why they are here and why they belong here, just like the Panthers do.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Number one, I've said this multiple times, that the Edmonton Oilers are such an incredibly fast team. I mean, that's one massive advantage they have compared to everybody else, really. I mean, obviously having Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl is a recipe for success on any team. But the big thing for them has been Stuart Skinner. I've been very impressed by him. He's been a lot less bipolar this postseason than he was last postseason. And I think that's going to go, if he can stay on his grind for the Stanley Cup final. This is another series I could see going, or another final I could see going 7 games again. They just look so good. I think they look infinitely better than they looked last Cup final. The big thing for me here, one, it's going to come down to goaltending, but number 2, Florida's defense is going to have to lock it the hell down, because offensively, granted, the Panthers get a lot of depth scoring. However, the Oilers offensively are far more talented, I would argue. So The Panthers are really going to have to lock this down defensively. They are the more physical team, so they have that going for them as well. But I mean, you've got to be able to stop McDavid. That's going to be a big thing here too. If there's going to be a year that Edmonton wins it, man, it's got to be this one. I did say that last year, but I think it's more prevalent now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it was last season. It was either this season or last season. I said with the group that the Rangers had, I'm like, this is the final call for them. They didn't get it done in the playoffs last year, and then they exploded this year. So now there's, again, going to be a new path forward for them. But it feels kind of the same for the Oilers. You don't really know what the future holds there. Ekholm's not getting any younger. Bouchard's going to need a huge contract. I don't know how much longer Nurse has left, but the big one is on July 1 this year. Connor McDavid is eligible for a contract extension, and you have to assume, unless he takes a team-friendly deal to stay competitive. First of all, the guy's worth league max, which I don't think he would ever take. I think he wants to be competitive. I think he knows you need to be able to ice a good team, but regardless of what his contract is, it's going to cost him a shitload of money. And so this is the last chance. You're right. You hit it right on the head. This is the last chance to do it for them with this group. And so we'll see what they're made of here. So I want now, we've worked so hard this season to get to where we are. I want you to give me an exact prediction. Where do you think the Stanley Cup, who do you think hoist the Stanley Cup in a couple of weeks here? How many games do you think it's going to take, and how do you think we get there?
All right. Well, this is one. So last year, I had been saying since mid-season that the Panthers were going to win the Cup last season.
And you were right.
This year, looking at how everything has gone and how good Edmonton is and how good Florida is, this is a really tough series to call. So I'm going to use my bias here. And, well, not just by, I truly believe that this can and will happen. But I'm going to say Panthers in 7. And let me elaborate on that a little bit. I'm aware that Edmonton has home ice advantage this series. But what you have to factor in is Florida has arguably been the best road team in the playoffs this year. And it's not even close. So I think that'll play a big factor. Granted, Edmonton is a hard building to play in. And they've shown that Edmonton has shown they have no problem playing in Florida. So they're just not a team that's fazed by that. I think also the Panthers have a ton of pressure on their shoulders right now to go back to back. Bob needs to stay strong, but if you're Edmonton, you need to capitalize on the fact that Florida's under immense pressure right now. And use that to your advantage. So while I believe it could go either way, I'm going to put it out in the universe and say Florida in 7.
All right. Well, for me, this is kind of a coin toss decision. And I used those exact words the other day when I was talking to you about it, because I'm like, I really don't know where to go. I legitimately was going to toss a coin and just pick whoever it landed on. But I felt for the sake of the show, it was a little more appropriate to make an informed choice.
Yes.
So, look, these teams are just so unbelievably good right now. Despite the fact that I had both of them exiting in round 1, and then I had the Oilers losing in each of the 2 following series. To my credit, I did pick the Panthers to win their second and third round series, but I mean, it was the Leafs and the Canes, so it kind of felt like getting a free space in bingo. But yeah, look, I picked them to exit in round 1 each, but they've proven that they're still the teams to beat come playoff times. They both didn't have the hottest finishes to the season, to say the least, the Panthers especially, but again, the Tkachuk injury and everything, and the Oilers too. It just didn't look like they had their best stuff going into the playoffs, but the right teams know how to turn it on in playoff time. And look, given that Tkachuk is clearly injured still, and that Sam Bennett, again, can't win faceoffs, it seems like, I do think the Oilers' depth is a little bit better as far as their ability to roll off 4 of their lines. And the defensive course, as far as how they've played, are actually, I feel like they're pretty even. But overall, I would say Bob is the better goalie. If you put me in a vacuum and I had to pick one goalie to steal a game for me, I'm still taking Bob. And that's not to discredit Stuart Skinner, who since his return in the Vegas series has been incredible. I mean, there's no other way around it. He's been outstanding. But again, over a long stretch, I think Bob's able to sustain his good play much better, where Stuart Skinner, if he's got that bad night, that might be enough to sink him. Although the games he's let in a bad goal or had a bad game, he's rebounded well too. So I don't want to take away from him, but it does feel like the Oilers are on a mission this year, just the way, again, they've come out and defied the odds and kicked everybody's ass in the playoffs. And again, still the fewest losses in the postseason, which the Panthers have only lost one more game than them. So it's not that drastic a difference. But look, I'm going to be happy for whoever wins this too. Like if the Panthers win it all, we kind of talked about this with Bob, but you can instantly put Barkov, among the top players of all time. We always talk about how he's like a Patrice Bergeron light. And I say this with the utmost regard because Patrice Bergeron is my favorite hockey player of all time. But I think a Stanley Cup here puts Barkov past Bergie for career. And it almost hurts me to say it, but it's kind of the truth. He's taken his team to three. He's captained his team to 3 Stanley Cup finals and potentially walk away with 2 cups in 3 years out of it. This puts Bob immediately in top 10 goalie conversation of all time if they win it. Plus, you look at guys like Sam Reinhart, Matthew Tkachuk, who are instantly first ballot Hall of Famers with another win here. Bobrovsky and Barkov probably are anyways, but there's a few guys in this lineup who could easily get themselves on a first ballot Hall of Fame if the Panthers win it all. And of course, the lovable rat Brad Marchand gets one more shot to stick it to the league if he can win another Stanley Cup. So that would be a great storyline for the Panthers.
Yes.
The other side of this is the Oilers, though. If the Oilers win, McDavid and Draisaitl's legacies are cemented in Edmonton and in Canada for bringing the cup back. Stuart Skinner could win a Stanley Cup for his childhood team. He's from Edmonton. He grew up an Oilers fan. And so he gets the chance to bring the cup back home. That's huge for him. Corey Perry, who has stepped up huge for the Oilers in the playoffs. He has had an outstanding run with the Oilers this year. A huge part of the reason that they're still here, especially now with the injury to Zach Hyman, he's going to be vital for them in these finals, but he can break his curse of losing in the finals so many years in a row. And obviously, has a chance to essentially bookend his career. He had the 1 cup early in his career with the Ducks, but has since obviously had several where he's been on the wrong side of history. So he's got a chance to bookend his Hall of Fame career with a couple of Stanley Cups. And then, of course, Jeff Skinner, who's playing in his first playoffs, has a chance to become one of the many guys who have left the Buffalo Sabres and won the Stanley Cup. So there are so many good storylines on both sides of this. And the fact that you and your wife are huge Panthers fans makes this an even harder decision because I'm a guy that loves storylines. And so I have my brother's team who can win another Stanley Cup on one side with all of these players who are on the edge of being first ballot Hall of Famer, greatest of all time conversation kind of guys. And the other side of it is McDavid and Draisaitl, who are 2 of the most skilled players this game has ever seen, having a chance to bring a cup back to Canada, bring a cup back to Edmonton, cement their legacies in NHL history, get their statues built. And with both of these groups being even better than they were last year, it's hard to make a choice. But because of how good they were and how much they've defied the odds, I'm going to pick the Oilers to win the Stanley Cup in 7 games this year.
All right, so we are in agreement. I don't think anybody's going to argue, regardless of who wins, that it's going to go 7 games.
This is going to be I hope to God this is a long series. Hockey fans deserve it. The Stanley Cup final last year was some of the best hockey I think I've ever watched in my life. And I think in every way you can imagine, this one will be even better. I think both of these teams have found even more to play for. McDavid's legacy again is on the line. The Panthers dynasty is on the line here. Like this, there are so many high stakes for this. These are going to be some unbelievably intense hockey games. And I'm shaking in my chair just thinking about how exciting this is going to be. I cannot wait to watch this final. I will be so satisfied either way. Obviously, my heart will be broken for one team or the other who is not able to win this series, but whoever wins this is going to cement their place in NHL history. And it's just so exciting to watch this as a neutral fan, because you can just watch it and enjoy the chaos that is going to be these next 2 weeks.
And I've said this too, mainly to you. If I have to pick a team to bring a cup back to Canada, finally, it would be the Oilers. And there is an upside for me, not as a Panthers fan, but as a hockey fan. Obviously, I want the Panthers to win this more than anything, especially for Brad Marchand. But the other thing is, if the Panthers lose this, as a hockey fan, at least I get to watch Connor McDavid, who is arguably the best player ever, raise a Stanley Cup. And that for the sport, that's incredible. There's not a bad outcome per se for me as a fan of hockey. Obviously, I want the Panthers to win it. But at least if they don't, the plus side is McDavid's going to raise a cup. So it's kind of it's almost a win-win situation for me, I would argue. But obviously,
It's like a win draw.
until the final buzzer sounds in the final game of the Stanley Cup final, I am going to be a massive Oiler hater until the series is over. And then if the Oilers come out victorious, I'll be the first one to congratulate them, because they have a team they are a team that has worked their ass off and are totally deserving of this. So either way, it's going to be, like I said, the rematch of the century and arguably the best hockey any of us have ever watched.
Yeah, I think this is going to be crazy. Game 1 Wednesday night in Edmonton. You might never hear a louder building in your entire life. You might never hear a louder building for a hockey game. That is going to be fucking ballistic. The series starting in Edmonton, and it's a rematch, and the Oilers are on fire. You might never hear a louder building ever again. So we'll see, man. We'll see. This is going to be crazy. This is, I think, all things considered, this is probably the best case scenario that we could have hoped for at the start of this year. As far as the Stanley Cup final, this is probably getting this rematch with both of these teams not only being better on paper, but playing at an even higher level than both of them were last year. I know it's going to suck for the Oilers that Zach Hyman's not playing. It sucks for the Panthers that Tkachuk is clearly not even close to 100%. But both of these teams are playing significantly better hockey than they were last year, and they're just better teams in general. I cannot fucking wait till they drop this puck on Wednesday night. I am so ecstatic to get going. You and I haven't actually decided how we're going to cover the finals, if we're going to do our weekly episodes, if we're just going to do short post-game reaction ones. We really haven't decided on that yet, but it will be decided before the finals start. So just keep your eyes open on your podcast apps, because if we do post game reactions, we'll just try and get them out after each and every game. But we got a wild ride to the finish here now. I can't wait.
Same here. I'm right there with you, buddy. If you're listening and you don't already, make sure to follow us on Instagram at Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, or on TikTok at Fresh Ice Pod, as well as Facebook, Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast. If you're interested in sending us questions, you can do so. You can email us. The email addresses are freshicehockeypodcast@gmail.com and contact@freshicehockeypodcast.com. We'd love to hear any input or questions you have, and we'd be happy to read them on the show. Other than that, got 3 days left, and that's when the final starts. It's going to be a hell of a run to the finish. So we're looking forward to having you along for the ride. Stay tuned. Keep your eyes out for our next episode, and we will talk to you guys then.